Conspiracy culture is, unfortunately, a spectacular mess. And there are several reasons for that. Number one, it's very unscientific. Science is oftentimes disregarded. People refuse to read scientific literature because it's inconvenient. It's much easier to watch some YouTube videos, listen to radio hosts, read blog posts, and live under the illusion to be knowledgeable, wise, special, and to have the moral high ground. If you really want to understand conspiracies and the world, you should get a solid foundation first by reading scientific works about criminology, history, military history. You should read military publications, especially on subversion, revolutionary warfare, and insurgencies. You should read books on psychopathology, especially the cluster B type disorders such as narcissistic disorder and antisocial disorder. You need to read books on cults, books on the human brain, books on diplomacy, and so on. Once you have this foundation and you have a firm grip on assessing probabilities, credibility, facts, and theories, you can move on to questions that haven't been answered yet. You can put puzzle pieces together. Religion is a questionable field. It's easy to get into a belief system and interpret everything in a religious sense and feel self-righteous. But you have to remember, there are many other religions out there, and its followers interpret everything through their religious glasses, and they feel just as self-righteous as you might feel. Conspiracy culture in the Muslim world, for example, is obsessed with hating Jews and generally everything that isn't Muslim or a particular brand of Islam. In some circles, conspiracy culture focuses on hating white people. Their whole concept of evil is unscientific. You need to find modern scientific discoveries about evil in psychology, neurology, genetics, and so on, and put these puzzle pieces together. Yes, there are evil people, and there is misinformation in all those fields of science. But you cannot dismiss entire fields of science. You have to figure out what's useful and what is not. Evil people use science to rule, and we cannot beat the bad guys with unscientific methods. Conspiracy culture tends to hate psychology. Not just ignore it, hate it. The only time psychology is briefly mentioned is when the subject is manipulative propaganda from the government or corporations. It's usually outward focused, not focused on ourselves. Conspiracy culture doesn't ask the important questions like what damage has all this tyranny caused to us, and how can we fix damage, and how can we become more resilient? Or the question, what are warning signs that indicate someone might have a personality disorder like narcissistic disorder? How do we properly judge other people? And this leads us to the next reason why conspiracy culture is a spectacular mess. Personality disorders. People with certain personality disorders poison everything. They cause nothing but trouble. We are talking about the so-called cluster B type personality disorders and also about schizophrenia. If you think narcissistic disorder isn't real or just means a large self-esteem, you really need to get some good literature on this. Establishment psychology has largely avoided this topic until the mid-1980s. That's how long it took to appear in the official literature, even though groundbreaking research had been done much earlier. A true narcissist does not love himself. He's afraid of his true self. He hates it. He has no use for it. He's instead obsessed with a fake, idealized image of himself, an alter ego that is perfect. Narcissists can hide their greed, cover their tracks, lie all day long, but if you know what to look for, you will find a person with a serious disorder, an addict of attention, praise, another narcissistic supply who will do whatever it takes to get his fix. These people have very weird thinking. Antisocial disorder comes in different flavors, from the garden variety psychopath with a short fuse who can't bear dull work and effort and needs thrilling activities such as stealing. Then you have smarter, more genetic psychopaths who can hide well behind a mask of sanity. Psychopaths have different brains than normal people, and there is great scientific progress in understanding this phenomenon. It's caused by faulty genes that affect the metabolism of the brain from the earliest stages of child development, and it's caused by traumatization, abuse, malnutrition, and bad parents, and of course bad governments. Then you have paranoia, an out of control sense of suspicion. If you just greet such a person nicely, he might suspect that you are dangerous to him and maybe even part of a greater conspiracy against him. You also have cases of emotional instability. Very difficult people. Schizophrenics have weird thinking, episodes of heavy hallucinations, and they often find all of this very, very interesting. Very thrilling. Much more interesting than the dull reality of their lives. Schizophrenics tend to incorporate elements from movies, documentaries, and news into their bizarre thoughts. In their mind, they become central figures in grand intergalactic conspiracies. Schizophrenia can be triggered by the active ingredient in marijuana and heavy psychedelic drugs. A bunch of popular people in the conspiracy culture have used or are currently using and advocating drugs, and they believe all sorts of weird things that sound a lot like schizophrenic thinking. It's important to have an open mind, but be careful with your brain and don't consider your own perception to be perfect evidence. People have believed all kinds of nonsense throughout the millennia and defended these beliefs vigorously. It's important that you get a broader perspective and not just think your own perception is perfect evidence. I myself have been publishing material for 11 years. Material you could call investigative, dealing with politics, evil things in history, and current world affairs. And during that time, I have met a lot of sane people, but also a number of crazy folks, and I mean real crazy. And just plain evil. They exploit others, they constantly lie, scheme, they are abusive, they scam others, and they care only about themselves. Just because someone else shares your views on some conspiracies does not mean that this other person is trustworthy, moral, or sane. Be very careful. Reason number 3, why conspiracy culture today is a spectacular mess. The standstill. Conspiracy culture is stuck. It has not evolved significantly since the 1980s. The internet and modern video equipment has made it look nicer and it's cheaper to spread, but it's the same old, same old. Every single day, no progression. The last great breakthrough conspiracy publications were from Gary Allen and real scientists like Anthony Sutton in the 1970s. Most conspiracy books that followed simply copied that stuff and added baloney to it. When David Icke published his first real conspiracy books, it was just a collection of old stuff and his weird esoteric beliefs. He wants people to detach from reality. He is mystifying evil instead of demystifying evil. He confuses people about evil. According to his books, we are all guilty of the evil in this world because we are not following his esoteric practices. If we don't jump on the bandwagon, we will face grave consequences. Now, in the same book, of course, he says, these other religions, they use guilt and threats to manipulate you, but in the same book, just 2 paragraphs on, he basically does the same thing. He threatens you, and he makes you feel guilty. Judging from his biography, he has every reason to hate reality. At some point, he just wanted something new, took a vacation in the jungle and took hallucinogenic drugs. He overinterpreted the significance of this experience and mixed it with questionable literature he came in contact with. That's pretty much it. Milton Cooper, the big shot of the 1990s, first appeared in UFO circles, claiming to have seen a UFO, and the more attention he got, the wilder his stories and claims became. He claimed to have stolen high-level documents, and every time others tried to verify any of it, he would get very defensive and make accusations. At some point, he claimed his garage with all the documents burnt down, but he refused to disclose the location of that garage, so nobody could verify the story. Then he published his Behold a Pale Horse book, a chaotic mix of old facts and new fiction. The book is a mess. He was a raging alcoholic and generally moved the conspiracy culture backwards, not forwards. And there were a lot of these conspiracy books that simply lifted material from the old 1970s bestseller books and added baloney ranging from neo-Nazi myths to regurgitated esoteric flimflam. Instead of scientific analysis of who runs the world and how and where are the weaknesses, these authors gave us the protocols of the elders of Zion. Instead of going beyond repeating older information about the CFR and the Trilateral Commission, we were given fantasy about aliens and other dimensions. Instead of providing solutions, we were given the advice to become esoterics and to send love in rituals to the bad guys. Reason number 4 why conspiracy culture today is a spectacular mess: worshipping of Vladimir Putin and copying Russian propaganda verbatim. I have explained this in other videos on this channel, so I'll make this brief. It is inexcusable to support the Russian dictatorship and to portray it as a hope for American patriots and others around the world. It is especially inexcusable if you have spent years with so-called research on conspiracies and tyranny in general. Russian intelligence agencies have always infiltrated Western media outlets, and it is no different with today's conspiracy culture. The Putin worship has become the central element now in conspiracy circles. It is a sick group narcissism. People have completely unrealistic expectations when they accept Putin as their leader, their helper, their savior. Most professional conspiracy guys can easily handle simple topics such as the banks exploiting us, our tyrannical government, and so on. But once a topic is more complicated, the conspiracy guys tend to fail miserably. Because it is almost impossible to earn a living as a conspiracy theorist, there is the seduction of taking Russian money or working for Russian television channels. That is so disgusting. You have to realize that these people are selling out every decent conviction and they are selling out their audience. And reason number 5 why conspiracy culture today is a spectacular mess: it's bad business. Really bad business. It's almost impossible to make a living as a conspiracy theorist. It's almost as bad as showbiz. A few guys make top dollars or decent money. A few more guys make a living with it, scraping by, mostly by working for the top guys. But don't expect good salaries or medical coverage. You will be exploited, and there's nowhere else to go. Then you have the masses of starving bloggers and YouTubers. If you're trying to do this on the side, next to your regular job or college, you will not fulfill your duties one way or the other. You cannot be successful in your real day job, and you sure as heck can't be successful as a conspiracy guy. Many think a career in the conspiracy world is attractive. They expect money, attention, and the freedom of being their own boss. They dream of staying up late, getting up late, working in their underwear, and being able to spend hours each day with porn and video games. In reality, you are most likely going to waste money and time if you get into this conspiracy thing. 99,999 times out of 100,000, you will never earn a living with this. And you should never ever use this conspiracy stuff as an excuse to be a loser, to not earn a living, to not grow up. There are only a few places that can actually hire people, places that have a staff, that have some sort of structure and substance. And establishing your own successful company is super hard. That's why this business has always been really dirty. Expect to get scammed and exploited, so be super careful who you work with, what contracts you sign. Expect your competitors to steal your ideas and use trickery to get ahead. They will make outlandish claims to get noticed. They will interview fake people who claim to be super important. They will bluff knowledge when they have none. They will promise you everything and fulfill nothing. You see, everything is free on the internet, and you will be competing with established people and with mainstream media and with all the crazies and with an entertainment and with porn and with video games. You will compete against all of this. So in closing, I have to say this. There are lots of great people who know important things about conspiracies and want to know more and who want to act upon this knowledge. And we have to realize that conspiracy culture at this point is pretty much dead. And we have to figure out why it's dead. And we have to reset it, we have to reboot it, and we have to avoid the mistakes that have been done so far. Because in its current form, conspiracy culture is not really improving things on a societal scale and on a personal scale. A lot of people get into this conspiracy thing and they end up more confused, and they've lost a lot of friends, they lost a lot of time, a lot of money. They're frustrated and they drop out. They drop out of the conspiracy movement. And a lot of people getting sucked into this conspiracy thing are the underachievers. So people who don't spend any money, people who don't want to have a job, who think that browsing the blogs and reposting stuff somewhere is totally respectable and is an excuse for being a bum. So if people have spent years consuming this conspiracy material and they're still making horrible personal choices or horrible choices otherwise, then you know there's something wrong with conspiracy culture. If people have spent years in conspiracy culture and they worship Vladimir Putin and they don't understand anything that is more complex, you know there's a real problem with conspiracy culture, that most of this time spent was a waste. And especially if conspiracy culture is connected with, let's say, the Patriot movement, or is connected to insurgent type groups, then you have to really know what to expect. You have to really know what to expect, because if, for example, American patriots listen to conspiracy garbage and they get onto this Putin cult bandwagon, these patriots are more likely to take Russian support and to negotiate with the Russians. What's going to happen if we retake, for example, Texas, and we announce the Republic of Texas? We will get immediate diplomatic recognition by the Russians, and we will have immediate security pacts with the Russians and trade deals with the Russians. That sort of thinking, this is really, really dangerous, because the superpowers may compete against each other, but they also will stick together if it preserves the balance of the superpowers. The superpowers do not want new players to appear. So that's why you will be stabbed in the back by the Russians, and there's a certain understanding between the superpowers that these tensions, these global East-West tensions, are being used to squash opposition in Russia and in the United States and in Europe and everywhere else. So a lot of this conspiracy culture is luring you into these traps. It's neutralizing your effort. It's getting you frustrated, so you just drop out of anything political and anything that goes deeper, or they lure you into religious extremism or ideological political extremism. So you have no positive effect anymore in the world and on other people. You're effectively neutralized. And conspiracy culture lures you into these geopolitical traps. And you have to remember, all these classic authors, the good authors from the 1970s, the Gary Allens and the Anthony Suttons, these people, unfortunately, are forgotten today. These people in the 1970s, they uncovered the fake nature of this East-West paradigm, of this East-West conflict. They explained to you not to fall for this dynamic. But today's conspiracy culture is infiltrated by the Russians, and it's infiltrated by crazies and opportunists, so they want to toe the Russian line, and the Russians do not want any of this Anthony Sutton stuff promoted. Because the Russians, they want Western technology, and Sutton was against selling that technology to the Russians. So, There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good people in conspiracy culture, but it is, in its current form, it's absolutely hopeless. It's tragic, it's a disaster, and it needs to be rebooted. If you like this video, please comment, please like, and please subscribe to this channel.